there's probably a boneyard of stories that didn't work. There was an episode where girls were getting turned into gold. When somebody was touching them, turning them into gold, and we couldn't make it work. We worked on it for like 3 days. Usually, if you can't make an episode work in a day, it's not going to work.
I dug up like the series Bible, had all these interesting facts that didn't really apply to the show, and a list of artifacts, of possible artifacts, just pages and pages of cool stuff that could have been done.
We wanted to do a Fountain of Youth story that didn't work. We wanted to do a story. We had this really great story where 3 Soviet cosmonauts had been frozen to send into space, and they ended up in the warehouse, and they got defrosted. Wow. In the warehouse, and there was this battle in the warehouse, but I guess at the time they felt it was too modern or they wanted more older historical artifacts at the time, so they said, put the kibosh on that story. We were going to do a big musical episode, like all musical.
I wanted Pete, and it's not a script idea, but just to be walking down the aisle and have Alice Cooper sitting up on one of the shelves, just like reading a paper in a chair, and then have somebody go, is that?
We talked about seeing them all as children, literally an artifact that reduces Pete and Myka to 5-year-olds, which isn't a big stretch for Eddie, but because he pretty much is a 5-year-old. Now, 5-year-olds are better behaved.
I always thought it'd be neat to shoot Warehouse 14 in space because there's no props in space, but that wouldn't make it very interesting.
What about the Adolf Hitler's microphone? I always liked that one.
I always wanted to do that. I couldn't make that story work either. Like I say, it's trains leaving the station, right? You can't stop. If a train starts getting clunky or slowing down, you get off that train, get on the next one, because it's a machine, and if you stop to make something work for too long, it doesn't work, you get behind and you're all screwed up. So if it didn't work in a day or so, we threw it out and moved on to the next story. When we decided to kill Leena, Artie had died at the end of the first season, and then he had the Phoenix in his hand, so he came back to life. Steve was killed at the end of season 3, and then Claudia used the metronome to bring him back to life. And so you do that a couple times, and suddenly death has no meaning. There's no real stakes in any of the stories, because if you die, we'll bring you back. There's no big deal. It was very important to me that we kill somebody who stayed dead, and that we killed somebody who was important to everybody. It had to be a completely innocent death, not random, but someone who was not in danger all the time, someone who is pure help, pure love, pure kindness and goodness.
Genelle, from day one, has always been just the sweetest, sunniest personality, always a joy to have around on set, always smiling.
There was never an evil bone or a dangerous bone in Leena's body. She was just there to help, to facilitate. And so she struck me in that way as the perfect character to kill.
He sat me down, and, you know, I could see the sadness on his face. So it's kind of like I knew something was coming. I
have good news and I have bad news. The good news is you're gonna have a really cool arc this year. You're gonna get very close to Artie. We're gonna be playing you guys together, and you've got a great scene coming up. The bad news is it's your death scene.
But the second he told me that, you know, we're planning on killing you, 10 episodes from now, it was kind of like, oh, okay, I was expecting you to tell me I'm gonna die next week, and that's it.
So while it was very moving and very powerful for everyone, it was almost a worse thing that Artie did it. That, to me, is interesting that characters have to then deal with. How do you forgive? How do you move past it? How does that change the dynamic of the relationship between you all? So that, to me, is another thing that made Leena's death much more interesting and integral to the growth of the show.
A lot of people have asked if I was upset, or, you know, there's been fans that think it doesn't make any sense, and why would they do that? But to be quite honest, in the defense of, you know, the creative side of the show, it completely made sense, and made sense as to why it would have to be Leena out of everybody. You know, it had to be somebody that had a very severe impact on Artie, and, you know, you can't go killing off Joanne or Eddie or Allison for that matter. I mean, so the next logical person would have been Leena.
When Leena's death scene came around, it was really heartbreaking for everybody. But I think what was so great about it was that Leena knew what was going to happen, but her love and care for Artie wouldn't let her walk away. And that's what's so great about the relationships on this show, is we care about each other so much that we'll risk our own lives for the other.
I remember very specifically throwing a line into Mrs. Frederick after Leena was killed, where she said,
I made her a promise, and now
the promise was, I will protect you. I promise I will protect you. And even Leena says at the time, you won't be able to, which I thought was kind of lovely.
I've worked on a lot of sets, and this is one I walk back onto, and it's kind of like I'm back home, and you kind of miss it, and you don't really know why, but you do, and that's usually the best things, when you can't say why.